a psychologist.
Dr. Panchu, I want to give you a pleasant
He is a
and
teacher.
why don't you join us and tell us a little bit about
And
yourself?
he is...
Oh, hi. Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this very prestigious program. And thank you for the opportunity to share the platform with Mr. Pierre and Dr. Jeremiah that I'm meeting for the first time. So this is a good forum. I have been following. We're talking physical health, and tonight we're talking most emotional and sociological wellness. But for me, I'm a trained clinical psychologist. I do some teaching, but I do a lot of clinical practice, from psychotherapy to forensics, psychological assessments, psychometrics testing. So these are some of the things that I do. I am currently in California, as you alluded to, and soon to be in Grenada in the next couple of hours.
Wonderful.
So it's a pleasure to be able to join with you. Sorry I couldn't be in studio. Studio is always
that's all right.
more pleasant.
We love the wonder of technology that allows us to be far away but still at home, right? We have another heavyweight on the program this evening. We were privileged to extend across the Gulf and meet a son of the soil in part, right? This gentleman is a product of Grenada both ways, so he is fully Grenadian. What do you say?
Yes, I agree.
All right. We have with us, joining us all the way from the University of Illinois, Dr. Rohan Jeremiah. Dr. Jeremiah, we understand that you've done quite a lot of work here in Grenada. In particular, you've worked with the Planned Parenthood organization, and we want to give you an opportunity to let our viewers know a little bit about you and the great work that you're doing. Dr. Jeremiah?
Great. Well, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. It's always good to be in discussion and conversations with folks in Grenada about issues that I think are also important to me. Most of my training is in medical anthropology as well as global health. And for an extended period of time, I also lived and worked in Grenada, being on faculty at St. George's University, School of Medicine. My area of interest has always been minority men's health issues. So, working in Grenada, I focused a lot on these sort of issues and problems, as well as also trying to find solutions. And so that's how I started partnering with Planned Parenthood Association. I also did quite a bit of work with the Grenada Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, which also facilitated the man-to-man program. So I've spent a great deal of time in the community, and just happy to be here to kind of talk through some observations and hopefully engage in conversations around solutions that we can facilitate for the community.
Very well. I want to thank you, sir. Tonight, then, we're going in deep, Brother Arthur. Right? Arthur is here in the studio with me, and we have our cups ready. Right? It's the cup of men advancing progressively. Tonight, Arthur and I would be drinking some man drink. I'll hear about it. But first, Arthur, you need to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, let me say that I'm just a lay person here. I have been working along with men for a number of years.
Right.
Dr. Jeremiah spoke about the Man-to-Man program. I have been involved in that program with the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic since 2007 to present.
Right.
And incidentally, Dr. Jeremiah was one of those persons that kind of supervised some of the sessions that I was a facilitator of. But I consider myself a men's advocate. There are a number of issues through the number of fields that I have been involved in, drug control, HIV and AIDS, a teacher, where the concern that I have seen, or the issues that I've seen, really and truly affect some of our boys and our men.
Right.
And, I have very, very keen interest in ensuring that, our men folk get the fair chance that is, they deserve.
They deserve, right.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, we're discussing tonight to be or not to be a cock sparrow, some critical decisions we want to call our people to make. But I must share with you some comments, some feedback from the outside, right? I got, it's interesting, last time we were on air discussing the subject of menopause.
Right.
Right, yeah. At the same time, the 29th, there was some activity going on where the director of health was commending young men who were going into nursing, right? So that's great, right? One of the comments I heard her saying that stuck with me was that we need male nurses, especially in the area of, I think it's psychology or that something like that, right? So that's interesting. But I have to share this with you. A gentleman in our community took the time to share his comments in writing, and he said, look, I'm encouraging all male members of his union, he's a union man, right, to take time off on Mondays to listen to this informative program. He says the information is timely, relevant, matter of fact, insightful, and results driven. So gentlemen, we want to thank all the persons who have been on the show and contributed. We're making little waves. As a matter of fact, what we've seen is that within about 4 days, we were able to have over 6,000 views.
Very
right?
good.
So we want to commend those of you who came, the people who are sharing. We want to encourage you to share. As a matter of fact, we want to let you know that next time we meet, there's going to be a Master Blaster session, because we will be discussing and breaking down some myths of manhood. But gentlemen, tonight the subject is to be or not to be a cock sparrow. I took the time to do a little research, and I've discovered within our sphere right here in Grenada there are some interesting facts that comes to mind. I got some facts from the Central Statistics Office, and what we've seen is that this was a 2019 survey that was done. In terms of the support of homes, where there is one adult male supporting the home, or the survey says that of the 42,000 people in the workforce who were surveyed, 6,139 such cases of there being one male supporting the house exist, right? That figure is pretty good, because relative to the others that I've seen, it means that there is a consciousness in our society, but there's some areas where we have some loopholes, right? And we need to fix it. We need to educate our people so that they could do better.
Certainly.
Right.
Certainly.
So we jump right in to the first question then tonight, right? And we have some men of renown here. They could certainly give us some answers. First question: what are some of the sexual and reproductive health issues that exist among men?
Well, if I would kick off, I know Dr. Jeremiah will have some comments on that, but being part and parcel of the HIV/AIDS response in Grenada, we do have issues of sexually transmitted infections.
Okay, okay.
If you go to some of the non-communicable diseases, we look at the issue of prostate cancer. We look at hypertension, diabetes. It talks about our lifestyle, the things that we eat and drink. And I'm sure Dr. Pancho would talk about the psychological problems that a lot of our men face. Right? The issue of drug use and abuse among our men, our young men especially. And boys. I mean, you go to the statistics, and all the areas that I've mentioned, you would see men and young boys. The numbers are very high for them in those areas that I've just mentioned.
All right, so it's a point of concern. Dr. Pancho, Dr. Jeremiah, you want to comment? So what are some of the sexual and reproductive health issues affecting our men?
Well, to build off of what Author Pierre has already indicated, I think for many individuals, they tend to think of the entryway into engaging men and boys has been primarily around HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment. However, over the years, we've been doing this for about 30 plus odd years now, we realize that there's more to men and men's health than just simply HIV/AIDS. And so therefore, we're starting to see more an emphasis around contraception, as Arthur alluded to, sexually transmitted infections, but also sexual dysfunction and infertility and male cancers, whether it be prostate cancer or colon cancer. These are all things that are are certainly emerging as issues that men are really concerned about and wanting to get more information about and possibly even prevent. But also to the notion that some other sort of ailments, whether it be diabetes, substance use, and hypertension, those also impact the male body as well too. So I think, certainly there has been an expansion around the idea of thinking around men's health beyond just simply HIV/AIDS testing and treatment.
Okay, all right, very well. So we have seen, however, because I had occasion to meet a gentleman last time that was proud of the 13 children that he had. He underscored his comments by saying that happened at a time when he had a lot of cash, could have handled, right? But there are some things that we need to be cognizant of. So it causes me to ask the question, what are some of the factors, do you think, gentlemen, that really shape the way of life that men in Grenada practice? Well, what do you think was going on or has happened to us? Why our people behave the way they do?
I would love to hear Dr. Pancho's.
Doc, you're on the hot seat.
That's a very good question. It now leads us to an understanding, maybe, of our cultural practices. It also speaks to the way we were socialized. It also speaks to a sort of philosophical idea of manhood that we have grown to adopt and made to believe that this is the way. Because when you talk about someone, a father, a male who has fathered 13, 14 children, that is a psychological it's a psychological plus in the community among his peers. But then when you look sociologically and psychologically at the implications of one person fathering 10, 15 children, you ask yourself, where does he find time to dedicate to these children? So you may feel great about the number of children that you have or that you could produce, but then you ask the question, are you able to be a father to these children, to the mom who bears or the women who bore these children? Are you able to supply for their needs? Are you able to safeguard their future? What is your role in all of this 10, 15 children? I think, and this is the pertinent question, that we have to now re-socialize our males to start understanding that fatherhood and is different from being a sperm donor or just making children because physiologically we are capable of doing so. So this is the education piece. This is the piece that Mr. Arthur is trying and fighting hard for in his capacity as an educator. All of us in some form or fashion. But this is, I think for me, when you ask the question, this is where I want to go. I want to talk about the sociological implication of having all these children and what is my role or what is the role of the father in all of the mix.
All right, very well. So we certainly would come to that, but I think there is a little hint of looking back that we need to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
As someone posited the question, did our experience historically have anything to do with the way our men behave, with the way they regard women, right? So I think we have to talk a little bit about our historic experience. I think I saw a signal coming from our team that we need to prepare for a break. Before we do so, I want to remind our viewers that coming up next week, you need to look for the blue flyer. Right? That blue flyer will tell you that next week we're going to be discussing, and I'm hearing hints of it in the comments given by Dr. Panchu. We're going to be looking at some myths of manhood. When you see that blue flyer, you know it's ours because you're going to see at the bottom of it, we highlight some of the persons who have partnered with us. Right? You'll see the G-Links and the Great Taste symbol. You'll see the Montparnasse plantation. You'll see the Labonte. You will see the Akata farms, right? These are people who provide good natural food, right? So take a look and become familiar with some of these symbols, because these are the people we want you to turn to when you have to do the remediation. Where do I get the good stuff, right? Tonight, Arthur and I will be drinking some man drink, right? So we'll tell you all about it when we return after the break, right? And we continue that conversation. When we get back, we're looking at, did slavery play a part in our way of life here in Grenada?
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy. To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal. When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Very well. We want to welcome back our listeners and viewers. We have folks joining us on GIS Live. There are also people joining us on the social media platforms. Look for the connection. On the flyer, we also included a link to the series, so if you missed one, you can certainly find it online. While we were on break, though, we had a sampling of the man drink. Arthur is curious to know what's in that man drink. So, Arthur, tell us about your experience with this man drink.
Well, I'm tasting, it is a plethora of taste.
Ah, my brother.
Mango is there.
Right. So, Arthur got the M in the drink, right? The M is for mango, right? And we had some A for apple, but not apple. Okay. It's Mammy apple.
Mammy apple.
All right?
Okay. Oh,
and
yes,
the N, Arthur, in that drink is for nutmeg.
Okay.
So we add a little sweet with something natural, something Grenadian, right? Some nutmeg honey as made by the folks at Great Taste.
Okay.
Right? You did
tastes
also,
good.
It is good. Yeah, you did also get a little Grenada grapes.
Yes.
You see the sea grapes?
Yes.
Yeah, man, we have it in the drink. Right? So
I'm tasting it.
We have to tell our people that we have a lot of natural resources in our country that are underutilized, and we have to be the agents of change, the ones that are creative. When we did our first series, remember the young man, the nutritionist, Akeem, said that we have to pay attention as men to what we eat. So I want to encourage the men folk in our country to eat local, eat natural, eat Grenadian, eat healthy, right? And you have a plethora of options that you could look at, right? Follow the logos on our flyer, and you'll see a number of sources where you can get good food. Tonight, though, did slavery play a part in the way our men regard our women? What do you think?
I do believe slavery had a part to play. When we look at, when I go back to the issues of slavery and what used to actually happen on the plantation.
Okay.
You look at your bigger, stronger, buff men.
Right.
They were basically used to impregnate and use as stock, really.
Wow.
To impregnate women of different plantations.
Right.
So as long as you were big and strong, and you could have done that, you will move from plantation to plantation.
So it's as if you as a owner now, when you have a prize ram, big bull.
That's right.
Right? Yeah, you're self-servicing.
That's right.
So it seems then there could very well be in our society some sort of carryover.
That's correct. And because of that, men had this sort of cultural issue embedded in them that, look, the more children I have is the bigger and better that I am.
Oh.
When you look at even there is another name instead of cock sparrow, you had what is called the village ram.
Village ram.
Right? So I mean, you are basically used as an animal to just spread your seed abroad so that you can get offspring, maybe looking as you, as strong as you, and so forth.
Okay.
And that seemed to have carried over, because even after slavery and just around the post-colonial time, we still had that as part of the culture.
Okay, all right. So gentlemen, Dr. Jeremiah, Dr. Panchu, any comments? Dr. Jeremiah, what have you seen in your areas of engagement?
Yeah, I think, to build off of what Arthur Pierre is speaking to, in addition to the sort of emphasis around reproduction and procreation, was this, there was also not really much engagement or practice around the concept of families or family unions. We're just simply having several, there was no sort of discussion or encouragement around that. Even at one point, marriages were not something that was either recognized or...
so I heard Dr. Panchu emphasizing in his comments his concern about family and time with children, right, as one of the issues, right? In the context of this type of upbringing, then that would be an element that's missing, and probably is why it's so easy for our men folk to think it's okay.
I don't want to belabor that point, but the point that Dr. Jeremiah just raised, well, you have to understand that the African man actually, he was part and parcel of family.
Okay.
Right? And I mean, if you look at the African culture, family was a big thing for them. So you come into the West Indies and into the Americas and and basically the structure of family was destroyed by using that man to just procreate as a procreation machine.
All right. So I think we're saying to our young men, that is not the best approach.
Of course not.
Right? And
of course
if you have to be philosophical about it and take the Shakespearean approach, the question was asked, to be or not to be a cock sparrow. We're saying to our men folks, don't be no cock sparrow in Grenada. We want family men. We want men who would be supportive and build their own families, right? Men who would be industrious. And these times, as we look around and see how the world is changing, we want men who are innovators and creative.
Dr. Pancho talked about the sociological fallout, and I know that he has maybe a lot of work to do when it comes to trying to give some sort of psychological and emotional support for women and for young children who are missing fathers, missing fatherhood, missing the support that should come from their fathers.
All right, so we want to roll then quickly and get the input from Dr. Pancho or Dr. Jeremiah. What connection have you seen between that trend towards playing the village ram role and the health of our menfolk?
Well, very interesting question. Very interesting piece to add now to the mix that we were talking about. Because remember, we're not a very wealthy society. Okay, we're not a very wealthy society. Resources are scarce in the Caribbean, and so when a man has a multiplicity of children, or children from 3 and 4 different homes, care for the children, or care for the woman or the women becomes an issue because our resources are limited. It therefore means that we're limiting, and that's a crucial piece here that people sometimes miss. We're missing the opportunity to care for the families optimally. And I know, Dr. Jeremiah, that's your thing. You're into global health and wellness, and so you are going to add your piece. But this is the crucial piece here with limited resources, because you're talking about the health. So we're not just talking about the physiological health, because all these children and lack of resources will take its toll on both the males and the females. However, you have to also understand that if a man cannot provide for the well-being of his children, if his child walks the street showing lack of clothing, lack of school books when it's time for school, that is going to play on his mind. I mean, you know, he might be feeling good that he has 10, 12 children, but he's also telling himself, how do I take care of their needs? How do I provide for them? So emotionally, he is weak. He might pretend physiologically. Let me say this here, and maybe we might talk about it, but if we don't, then let me raise it here. You see a lot of men who and I'm talking about not just no men, we're talking about men as boys growing up. You see them and they spend a lot of time in the rum shops. Okay, those of us who are familiar with life in Grenada, and do you know that part of the reason that they're spending all these times in the rum shop is because emotionally, psychologically, they are so disturbed about what is going on in their life that they have to numb themselves to go home to the reality of the impoverished life that they have placed their families by having all these children. Trust me on that one. So they're numbing themselves to go. So when you talk about the health, how has a life of multiple children taken its toll on the health of the males? You have to think of the psychological ills and turmoil that they're faced with and they're going through and have to deal with on a daily basis.
All right. Very well. I get your point, Dr. Panchu, and I think we raised that comment last time when we were discussing the notion of andropause. Right? We recognize that it's something that affected as much as about 20% of the males. And it caused me to ask the question, indeed, as Dr. Panchu is raising, the men that we find in the rum shop, are they all there because they really like that sort of thing, or is it because they have an escape? And this is one of the reasons why we started this series, right? Because I recognized clearly that there was a dearth of services, a dearth of places that you could turn to, a dearth of people that you could speak to when you have a problem as a man. And the conversation gives us the springboard, and we're happy that we have the linkage with folks in the diaspora like Dr. Jeremiah. We'll give him a chance to comment as a public health specialist on that same question. What I recognized was that indeed there's an escape that you need, because men don't tell another man about their deficiencies. You probably try to cover it up. And one of the things that will be used to cover it up is that escape tool, right? A little drink.
Yeah,
so you socialize and you all talk and you didn't speak about your problem to anybody else. You try to hide it. So Dr. Jeremiah, we want you to weigh in on this question. How does men's health affect the family, the community, and the nation? Throw in your public health perspective on things here for us.
Yeah, and to build off of what Dr. Panchu was speaking to, I'm actually been thinking about my own work in Grenada when I was trying to understand the sort of factors that contributed to people being associated with domestic violence. And one of the things that I often saw was the notion that this concept of not being able to be a breadwinner because the economic disadvantages or challenges that they experience, that created a challenge to their masculinity in terms of their identity. And because of that, they oftentimes resorted to violence as well as to substance abuse as reasons to try to assert themselves within the family because of those other deficits. And so therefore, when thinking about trying to address some of these sort of social problems and community problems, we also have to think about the root causes of not, the economics behind some of these things that really sort of contributes to why men don't feel that they can be breadwinners, or even it also questions their own masculinity in terms of their identity.
Very well. So in one of the questions, in one of the sessions we have coming, indeed we'll be dealing with that subject. Right? So you're the breadwinner would be the subject of that question, but you look like you want to make a comment.
One of the concerns I have is the vicious cycle that we sometimes see. You have the man not being able to provide for his family. You have the children being at a disadvantage, right? And we do have male children involved in that as well. That's right. Let's say we have some sons, some young men. When they look at the model, it sometimes takes a lot out of them to even go against that grain.
Wow.
So what you would find happening is that a lot of young men would say, look, if daddy could do it, I could do it too.
All right.
Right? I could have 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 children. I don't have the money, I don't have the means. He did it, he survived. Right? We were able to piece together things. They will survive as well.
All right.
And at the end of the day, what happens to, you find mothers and young women are actually feeling the brunt of the things that we seem to be lacking.
All right, interesting. You know, it caused me to reflect on my experience this evening. So after I find her looking kind of new, I went to the barber. Right. My experience or trip to the barber this evening, however, created a window into some of what you're speaking about. When I heard about gambling before, it was old men. Am I right or not?
Yeah, no, that's correct.
Right? Yeah.
That's correct. When they play the wappy and the this and
right.
that.
It was
yes.
old men.
Yes.
Right? It was a behind, in the back, in the bush kind of a thing. Right? This afternoon, I witnessed a lot of young men by the road, in a shop, and they're deep in it. Right? Are they a product of daddy show me so, or because I didn't have the father figure in my life, that I am resorting to these quick fixes rather than thinking about aspiring and education as the ladder for changing my economic status, right? So it was quite alarming. And gambling is illegal or illegal in Grenada?
Well, I believe the type of gambling that you're talking about certainly is illegal.
Okay.
All right. Let me just give you a little bit of history. My father was a shopkeeper, and you know, growing up, I love to observe a couple of things. Now, back then, you had the shop where you could have, you know, buy groceries, and so rum was sold, alcohol was sold, but there was a little part of the shop they used to call a saloon, right? And when persons came to buy groceries in the village shop, the rum and so would not be sold at that section, but basically would be passed through a little hole into the saloon.
Oh.
So you don't have, the optics there is that, you know, we don't want to really see you handling that rum and all of that. It was, you know, pushed aside.
Yeah.
Children were not allowed to even go in the saloon.
Wow.
Young people, young men and so, was not allowed to go to the saloon. Was only, and I mean, they used to have gambling and all of that.
Right.
Right? But I believe, I mean, in my own analysis of the situation, it has, I believe a lot of our young men, you know, maybe because they're unemployed, they might have a little bit of money and they figure that they could turn that over, you know, by doing some under the counter, back of the shop, under the bush kind of gambling to be able to get something. That's just my take on that.
All right, very well. All right, we have a few more questions that we want to raise before we break tonight, right, and bring this series to a close, but we have to take a little break. Right, so Arthur, we'll have a little more man drink.
Of course.
All right, we'll take a break and then we'll return with some questions after the break. We want to let our viewers know that they could follow us online or they could follow us live online. We're on Facebook and YouTube and we're having a good following. We're looking to have an engagement with the unions coming up soon, so we want you to stay tuned. The next subject, myths of manhood, be there, right? Look out for the symbols underneath that blue flyer. There is where you could find some local healthy products. Thank you.
The house was shaking.
Okay, viewers, we're back. We want to thank you for joining us, and we want to encourage you to share the link. Let your friends know that we're talking about some serious issues. What we hope to come out of this engagement is that there will be some interventions. The group that we've started that's spearheading this initiative is Men Advancing Progressively. It's made up of a number of professionals in our community, and we're looking for those linkages even with persons in the diaspora that will give us the teeth, the muscle to be able to make some small interventions and marks that would be make us agents of change. Right? We're happy to have with us tonight Dr. Jeremiah. He is in the University of Illinois. Right? He has a sterling record of activities that he is involved in regarding global health and men's health. We have with us Dr. Panchu and our dear brother Arthur. As we bring this program to a close this evening, there's an important question that we must look at. That is the question: how do we engage men in accessing or taking advantage of sexual and reproductive health services? What we learned earlier was that men are shy to discuss those issues. Men are shy to come forward and declare that they have a need. Men will hide behind the issues with as we just spoke about, with the bottle and other things, right? How do we get our men to engage in services that are provided? So, Dr. Jeremiah, you've done a lot of work along that line as an expert in the public health arena. We want to give you a chance to share some enlightenment on this question. How do we get our men folk to access the services?
Yeah, I think we definitely have to think outside of the box in terms of the traditional ways in which we normally deliver healthcare, specifically for men. Setting up a clinic or expecting someone to come into a clinic to access services is just not the most feasible and most appropriate way to engage men around some of these issues. At the same time, too, I also think that there should be some policy and structural level sort of changes, which will really sort of foster inclusive language and practices in terms of in being more inclusive around how men talk about certain things, as well as also how they identify and engage in healthcare services. But also to finding role models, men who are able to come out and speak about their own trajectory towards maintaining their health, and particularly on issues related to sexual reproductive health, I think are all good examples of things that we should try to do. And so therefore, you know, really kind of thinking about this in a multi-layered approach, both in terms of structural adjustments and changes policies, but also to the engagement with the community, I think is really critical. I think before any of that stuff, in fact, we probably need to have a conversation and some sort of a community needs assessment around what specifically are the needs that men are concerned about, but are uncomfortable accessing or seeking help for. Right. And from that, we think about the other things that we can try to do to engage them.
All right, very well. Dr. Panchu, you want to comment?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jeremiah. And I like the trajectory that you took. Let me also say that I recall when I came to the United States and I entered into my 40s, my primary care physician said to me that I needed to do a prostate exam, you know, and at that time, Loma Linda University, where I was attending, was keen on men's health, and not just men's health, but the African American male, you know, Dr. Jeremiah, because you know, prostate cancer is probably the highest among the African American male, the black male, and so, but I recall my experience. I was sort of petrified. Remember, no, I am working on a doctorate, right? And at my educational level, you would think that I would have a bigger, greater understanding of the intricacies and the usefulness of an exam like that. And it took my primary care physician some sort of coaxing me into the procedure, but I'm glad I did. And so now I do my yearly exams without any, you know, hiccups. And so what we're saying is that yes, we have to educate our males about issues of reproductive health. So whether it is erectile dysfunction that some of our males. Now remember, watch this, how cyclical it is and how maybe ironic it is, because we're introducing a topic of male being powerful, the prowess. They can multiply. Their potency is not an issue for discussion because they have it all. And they have all these children. As they get older, watch this, as they get older, some males lose that ability. And they're embarrassed, Dr. Jeremiah, Ms. Arthur, about it. And so just to go to a health professional to discuss that issue with them becomes a really scary place psychologically for them. So Dr. Jeremiah, that is where you and I, we need to collaborate a little more, because now we have to make the services sensitive to their needs, but also we have to do a lot of education to get them to the point where they will access these reproductive services.
Yeah, I like what I'm hearing.
I just want to, if I may, just want to add one thing. Dr. Jeremiah indicated that we need to think outside the box.
Correct.
And my thought is we have to get our boys getting accustomed to visiting the doctor. We often, young women, when it comes to the issues of sexual reproductive health, you would find them going to the doctor regularly. The slightest thing that would happen to a female, she goes by the doctor. There are checkpoints. When she begins her menstrual cycle, you would see the mother might carry the daughter because she may be having pain and all of that, carry her to the doctor. We as young boys, we don't have any checkpoints.
Correct.
Right? Boys are rambunctious, they fall, they damage it, and they don't get the opportunity to have a relationship with a physician.
Correct.
They don't feel comfortable, and that's basically part of the same thing that Dr. Pantry is alluding to.
Alluding to, yes.
They don't feel comfortable, and now they're big. They're going through this problem. Who do I turn to?
That's the issue.
Right.
That's the issue.
A lot of times, and Dr. Jeremiah spoke about it as well, we need to also get our men folk to talk to our men folk.
No, that's
right? To really, because when you look at some of the services that are offered, they're offered by females. And some men feel, look, I'm going to talk to. Exactly. So, we need to really create that culture where our young boys, are familiar and feel comfortable to talk about some of these issues.
So I think, gentlemen, we've made a circle. This program was engineered for the very said purpose of exposing some of the issues. And my personal experience was that when I thought I needed some help with that issue, I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to talk to. Right? It was kind of embarrassing too, right? So I'm happy that I'm able to I would have crossed the fence, but it took some effort, right? And there was a price to pay. Notwithstanding, I want to resonate or repeat some of the points that resonated here. I heard educate our males, right? I heard, and it relates to a call that, as I said, the director of nursing hospital services, Dr. Carol McIntosh, should have made this call for men to go into nursing. Why? A man would feel much more comfortable telling a next man about something to do with his ability to get on his mat and get set than he would speak the same issues to a female. Right? So it's important that we have waypoints, hooks that we could access, right? I heard Dr. Jeremiah speak about the need for us to do needs assessment in our communities, right? And I heard about policy changes. When we met first, this was a big issue. We learned that there are a few countries, really, that have men's health policies. Right? As we get the unions on board, there are some things now we're beginning to pinch that maybe our brothers in the union have to speak more on issues and bargain for a little more access to men's health related issues for the brothers that are part of the union, right? So while we can't negotiate for an increase in pay,
Yeah, we should be able to negotiate for better health.
We could
services.
negotiate for better health services that is akin for men, right? Yeah. I heard about role models, right? And again, we're here as men sending a clear message that there are strong personalities in our community, right? The men that are speaking on this program are, can I say, upright men, yeah. Good role models, right? So when our men folk want people to model, think about the Dr. Rohan and the Panchu and even the brother Arthur here. Right, you could think about me last. I'm the last one, but I'm a good model too, right? There is a cycle of growth that we expect to come out of this engagement. Already, I'm hearing Dr. Panchu flagging Dr. Jeremiah that we should have a conversation. So this is what we want to encourage, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who are in the diaspora and you have skills, you have resources, let's reach out. There are entities here that are ready to work with you so that we could begin to effect change and meet the needs of our men folk in a tangible way. It's better for us to make small incremental steps where we could accurately measure our results. The results-based method is best. We don't want to bite a big pie and then we can't see results, and good things are happening. We're halfway through our 6-part series. We have another 3 parts to go. We have some effective speakers lined up, and we want to encourage you to come out here and join the conversation. Share the links, share the program. Let our people feel free to talk about issues that affect men and their health. Right, coming up, midst of manhood, you need to be here. Right. Any closing words, gentlemen, before we pull down the curtain?
Let's hear from our folks in the diaspora.
Well, let me add my little piece.
Go ahead,
Thank
sir.
you for inviting me and having me as part of this very illustrious panel. My closing remarks would be, I think we have, as a society, we have passed the stage of men wanting to be cock sparrow. I think a lot of education has gone into our schools, into our communities, into our churches. We have some very conscientious people at school and in our churches that promote fidelity, promote close family bonding, and the cock sparrow mentality. So I think it's becoming a thing of the past. There may be a couple of people who still practice polygamous relationships or multiple relationships, but I think the idea of cock sparrow is dying out. My closing piece is, I wish that men on a whole could get acquainted with their bodies. If there is a cry or thrust I want to promote is, get acquainted with your body. So when you see things are happening in your body, and not just your male sex organs or your reproductive organs, but just, it doesn't matter which part of your body, pay attention and seek medical advice. Because sometimes men wait too late. They procrastinate, they wait too late, and then it is something simple that can be caught in its inception and cured leads to sometimes terminal illness, the loss of limbs and life. So my encouragement is for men, to get acquainted with our bodies and to take care of it.
Very well, thank you, sir. Right. Yeah. We heard Dr. Martin giving a similar type of advice in some of our previous sequence. Dr. Jeremiah, we want to give you an opportunity to share your capsulating thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I think much of what Dr. Panchu has already indicated, I think, are really good points. I personally would love to see this conversation be something that's happening on an ongoing basis within the community, so that you have individuals who are particularly interested in wanting to be more engaged around this, meet on a regular basis, and hopefully also build community momentum around both seeking out resources and also perhaps also advocating for other men, and particularly young men in particular. So there are a number of ways in which I think this conversation, and what we would also say discourse, should happen and continue, that does not require being particularly on a television show. That I think it's really critical that we need to take ownership in that way to really look out for ourselves. We're relatively a small society, and so therefore, we want to make sure that everyone's doing well. And keep in mind that our emphasis around looking at and addressing men's health issues has implications for the family structure as well. So if you have a healthy father, a healthy husband, it also means that the family will also be a healthy unit as well too. So I really want folks to think about this as being sort of a larger scope of implications for Grenadian society.
All right, very well. Well, we feel privileged to have been able to share this evening. We look forward to continuing this discussion. What we see here is the nucleus for some further engagements on some of these issues. By no means is this the last time you will see us. We're here not this Monday, the following Monday, every other Monday up until around the end of October. And we will bring the discussion to the table where we examine some of the issues. Look out for one male crab in this hole, right? It's one of the pieces that's coming up. It's going to be an exciting engagement, and we have challenged the people within our sphere of operating who can make significant contributions to come forward. Let's discuss the issue and let's put plans in place so that we can be agents of change and build a better Grenada, build a better country. And we want to thank you all for viewing. We want to thank you for sharing, and we look forward to being with you next time. In the meantime, Arthur and I will enjoy some man drink. Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.
All right, good night.